Okay,
And somebody should shoot that groundhog.
good. No, Linda, please. The recording is in progress. So, on that note, I'm about to turn the lights on. Hold it. So, okay.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but I think we are missing quite a few people, so there could be hiccups.
We do have a quorum, however.
Mhm.
So, good evening, everybody. It's after 5 o'clock. Welcome to the Thursday, February 1st, 2024 Nantucket Conservation Meeting. Permit me to confirm that all members who are present can be heard. Members, when I call your names, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Beal. Do I see Mark? I don't see Mark. Okay. Tim Brain.
Here.
Sif Engelborg.
Here.
Joe Plandowski.
Here.
Linda Williams.
Here.
Ian Golding here. I know that Mike Mazzarelli is going to be unable to join the meeting this evening. I hadn't heard anything from Mark, so
I'll text him.
hopefully he'll join. Okay, so this meeting is being held entirely remotely, so all participants are participating via a Zoom webinar. Public may participate via YouTube. There are directions on the town's website as to how to join. If anybody wishes to speak, please raise your hand either in your camera window or virtually and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please state your name and any relationship you might have to the project before speaking. Please keep your devices muted when you're not speaking so that you're not picked up by the recording or creating a distraction. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We'll start the meeting with public comment on items not being heard this evening. Will, are there any public comments?
I think you'll probably have to direct the
No.
attendees to raise their hand if they want to be promoted to a panelist.
Oh, well, we don't have the YouTube feed.
I do have there's no public comments on YouTube, but if any attendees, they do have to raise their hand, I believe.
Right, no attendees have raised their hand. So moving on to public hearing, notice of intent, the following are continued. Lampoon Nominee Trust, 6 Westgate Place. And also in the public hearing part of our agenda, the discussion of and potential adoption of the Nantucket Wetlands Regulations updates have been continued until February 15th. And Linda, I see your hand raised, and I see
Mark,
also Will's hand raised.
He's probably doing the same thing because I just talked to Mark and he's having trouble with this link. Doesn't understand how to use it. And I sort of walked him through it. So he's trying to get on.
Thank you, Linda. And I forgot to mention in notice of intent that Osprey Way Real Estate Trust, 1 Osprey Way, is also continued until February the 15th. Is that why your hand is up, Will?
Yes, as well as 5 Gingy Lane. I don't know if I might have missed that. And then I have a quick note for Mark. I think Charles tried to promote him to an attendee. He just has to accept, or I'm promoting him to a panelist. He just has to click OK on his screen. Sorry for the hiccups tonight, guys. We'll get it ironed out in no time.
Okay. So let me see. Can you reach out to Mark?
He's here now.
He's here now. Brilliant. Aha. Mark, good to see you. Good evening. All right. So moving forward, notices of intent. Carol W. Dean Revocable Trust, 48 West Meyer Comet Road. And I believe Paul Santos is presenting for that. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening. Excuse me. So I'm on, and okay, that's great. Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant, Catherine Dean Schulman, who is the trustee of the Carol W. Dean Revocable Trust. This application is for the proposed installation of an in-ground pool with an auto cover within the 100-foot buffer zone to a coastal dune. The resource areas depicted on the plan in front of you include land under the ocean, coastal beach, coastal dune, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the associated 100-foot buffer zones. The subject property is located on the south side of West Meyer Comet Road. The site is approximately 67,996 square feet, consisting of a primary dwelling, a shed, and a fully developed residential lot. The surrounding land use is residential. The Massachusetts Natural Heritage Atlas, the 15th edition dated August 1st, 2021, shows that priority habitat and estimated habitat is mapped within the property, but does not cover the proposed pool location. The proposed work did not require or does not require a filing with MESA. The plan before you lays out the lot itself. You'll see West Meyer Comet Road to the north. You'll see the Atlantic Ocean to the south. And if we work our way from the ocean to the site or to the area that the proposed pool is in, we have the land under the ocean. We have a coastal beach. We then go to a coastal dune. And from there, we have our 25-foot no disturb and the 50-foot no build. The pool itself is located within an area that is currently a developed lawn. This house was moved some years back with permits from this commission and from NHESP. And the existing dwelling location, hardscape, the shell drive, and the lawn area was permitted as part of that original submittal. As recently as, I believe, last year, this property was before the commission for the installation of a set of seasonal aluminum beach stairs. Those stairs were installed this past season and have currently been removed. What's remaining is the existing stair platform, which is the area of the aluminum section of the stair that the stairs are connected to on the seasonal basis. So that seasonal platform still does exist, but the stairs themselves were removed at the end of the season. The pool itself is approximately 17 by 36 feet in size. It would be proposed with an auto cover. There would be no fencing proposed with it. It's simply a pool itself with a 2-foot coping. No other patio or hardscape is proposed, or decking is proposed as part of the application. There are 3 notes that speak specifically to the pool itself, notes 5, 6, and 7 on the plan. Note 5 states that the limit of work for the pool construction is confined to the existing shell drive lawn and the planting areas, all outside the 25-foot no disturb zone. The limit of work will be defined by erosion control barriers to contain work activities, sedimentation, and work personnel. So access to the location of where the pool would be constructed is through the existing shell drive, over the existing lawn, and then the pool itself sits within the existing lawn area. Low decibel pool equipment will be located in an underground vault to eliminate visibility and to mitigate the neighborhood from potential mechanical sound pollution. That vault will actually be located outside of Concom jurisdiction within the lawn area. That will be outside of the 100-foot buffer zone or the Concom's jurisdiction. Exterior lighting will be directed away from the coastal resource areas and surrounding properties in compliance with Chapter 102 of the Code of the Town of Nantucket. That's the basic application. I will note that there were a number of letters submitted from some of the direct abutters, some of the abutters within the general area. There was a specific letter submitted on behalf of, I believe, the McGraths, which are the direct abutters to the east, by Attorney Brian Swain. We did provide a written response to Attorney Swain's questions and comments. We think we addressed all of those fairly well, but that letter was submitted to staff and to Attorney Swain in advance of this meeting, and it is included also in the packet. There was a photo submitted today, which shows recent erosion within this area. And what the picture depicts is the aluminum platform that the aluminum stairs are connected to. You'll see there is a section of cantilevered platform. The remainder of the platform is set into the dune, as was previously permitted for the stair construction. And there was no other structure located seaward of this platform other than the aluminum stairs themselves. I will say also, as part of Attorney Swain's letter, this original application was submitted in November of 23. Subsequent to that, there were a few storm events. We did provide a updated dune crest location, if you will, which was done on January 9th. And that is also depicted on the plan itself. The dune crest is essentially current through 1/9/24. The location of the dune crest to the proposed pool is in excess of 100 feet. And the distance from the coastal dune to the pool is in excess of the 50-foot no-build requirement. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have, or anything that may come up outside of the letters that were submitted with regard to the abutters. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Questions from commissioners? Yes, Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Paul. So the photos that were submitted today showing the recent erosion, that is obviously after the dune was reflagged on January 11th. Does that erosion have any type of substantive change on the location of the coastal dune? I ask this because where the pool is sited at is right up against the 50-foot buffer. So if there were even, 1 or 2 foot change, that could impact the location of the pool. So could you please talk on that? Thank you.
Sure. If you bring the plan back up, Will, the coastal dune is actually quite a bit landward of the dune crest. Seth, this is a dune that's kind of grown over the years. So there's been no change to the area between the flagged coastal dune limit and the pool location. That area, the approximate distance from the dune crest to the toe of the coastal dune landward, or toward the dwelling in the area of the pool, is approximately 45 feet. There was a slight change in the dune crest between the 9th and the 24th, but there's still, as of today, the measurement from the top of the dune crest to the proposed pool location is still in excess of 100 feet. And if you'll notice on the plan itself, you can see where the platform, you see the existing stair platform, and you see the dune crest was just underneath or just adjacent to that platform. And that mimics somewhat what that picture, the picture that was taken. So the dune crest line on the 9th head was done after a few storm events that did change the dune crest location. So as you're looking at that photo, you can kind of see that the actual dune itself, as I said, was about 45 feet. There's almost a shaded, if you see where the path is, there's almost a shaded area, a clump of some vegetation. That's kind of where the actual toe of the base of the dune is landward.
Thank you, Paul. Seth, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just because this is it's kind of a complex landform there. So the dune crest and the coastal bank overlap with each other. Am I correct in reading that from the plan? And is this an actively eroding coastal bank, or is this just considered a coastal dune and we're not worrying about the coastal bank?
If so Brian Madden's on the call too, Seth, if we need to get any further explanation, but I think I can explain this. It's not a coastal bank, it's a coastal dune. A coastal dune that goes into a coastal bank. I'm sorry, a coastal beach. So there is no coast, you can't have the dune and the coastal bank at the same time. So it's basically, the landform is a coastal dune. And so when we talk about an eroding coastal bank, there is also provisions under, there is no provisions essentially for an eroding coastal dune, but there are provisions for an eroding coastal beach, which you do have. But in this case, the coastal beach is seaward of the dune crest. It's actually at the toe of the dune crest. So when you start looking at the erosion, or the 20 times the erosion rate and things like that, in this particular case, it would actually be measured from the coastal beach, not the dune crest. That being said, the dune crest right now is in excess of 100, is excess of 100 feet. And when you look at the long-term, the current CZM erosion rates for this particular area, I think it's around 4.5 or something in that area. The latest being the 2018 update of the CZM information.
Thank you, Paul. Any further questions from commissioners? Mark.
Thank you, Ian. I'm a little troubled by this application because there's not very many hundreds of feet to the east. We lost 40 feet of waterfront at the sewer beds. And here we're going to build a pool right up against a 50-foot. And I just think that's asking for trouble. If you look at the old plot plan of this lot, the lot is 1/2 underwater. I mean, this is a losing proposition. We're going to be putting thousands of gallons of water near Myacomet Pond and near the ocean. I'm not sure, it's a question for Will maybe to help me on, but Will, can we say no thank you to the application because he's in the 100-foot and we just think it's a risk of flooding?
Will, would you care to sidestep this question?
I'd love to sidestep the question, but in all honesty, I'm not sure that we can, because the line is what it is right now. As much as I agree with and understand the argument that very, very close by we just lost 40 feet, so on a personal level it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I could see that being appealed, in short.
Thank you, Will. Brian, would you mind waiting until Seth has chimed in? Thank you. Seth, you have something to add? Before
Yes,
Brian can address
yes.
all our concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So under the Nantucket Wetlands regulations, we actually do have a applicable performance standard here for coastal dune. It's performance standard number 6, which is any activity allowed on a coastal dune or within 100 feet of a dune shall be restricted to such activity that is determined by the commission not to have any adverse effect on a dune by altering the ability of wind or waves to remove sand from or deposit sand on a dune, by disturbing vegetative cover in a manner sufficient to destabilize the dune, by causing any modification of the dune form and slope, which would increase the potential for erosion, storm or flood damage, by interfering with landward or lateral movement of the dune, or by causing the rate of sand removal to increase through man-made means or structures. So that's really the scope of review under which the pool falls under. I think it is important to note that a pool being a structure in the ground, by definition, interferes with landward movement of the dune. And potentially, if we have an actively eroding area eroding up to that pool, the pool is going to be blocked, or the dune is going to be blocked by that pool. So it's important to note that actually does impact the landward movement of that dune. Some of those other standards under that performance standard are probably less relevant, but there are some analyses that need to be done here of the structure to make sure that it does fit that performance standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Brian? Yes. Mark, go ahead.
No, I
You'll be
just
able to
thank
answer everybody at once, Brian. So, excuse me. Yes, Mark.
No, I just wanted to thank Seth for pointing out the fine point of that performance standard. I think this application is asking for trouble, and I think that we are, with what Seth just quoted, are within our right to say no. This is an eroding beach for sure. It missed this house in a large way this winter. But next winter could be different, and he'd be maybe even in the 25-foot zone for all we know. If we lost 40 feet, 1,000 feet away, we could lose 40 feet here, and then we have the pool right in the middle of things. So I just think it's a bad idea, and if it doesn't meet the performance standard, I'm going to be opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Seth, before Tim chimes in, since I'm dealing with commissioners first here, Brian.
Just
yes,
very
Seth.
quickly, if I may, I'm not making an official statement at this point on whether it does meet the performance standard or not, because there is a possibility for said project to be conditioned in a way that could meet the performance standard. But it's on the burden of proof on that is on the applicant. There are certainly engineering ways to have a structure that also allows for landward movement of a dune. But I don't think we've necessarily seen that in this application. So I just want to note that that is relevant. But again, it's the Concom's duty to try to permit applications in a way that can be conditioned to meet the performance standards prior to going straight towards a denial. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Tim?
Yeah, I was just, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask if Seth could explain how the pool might interfere with landward movement of the dune. Just so I can understand it better. It's kind of new territory for me, if you don't mind, Seth.
Seth?
Sure. So, first of all, for those of you who don't know exactly what this means. Landward or lateral movement of a dune is essentially the ability for the dune to move in the case of landward away from the sea as erosion increases, or lateral would be down the shoreline to other parts of the dune field if there's erosion in a specific area. Any type of physical impediment to that, whether it be a um, a wall, a coastal engineering structure, a house with footings, a pool that has, footings into the ground blocking the movement of sand, has the potential to block sand from advancing landward and then allowing a dune to reestablish in a new place. So erosion, people think of erosion as sand just getting swept away, but there's also accretion. Dunes, they do go away and then they could form in other places if we allow appropriate areas for them to reform. So I'm not claiming 100% that this pool necessarily will do that, but certainly any type of physical impediment to sand moving could be uh, a barrier towards landward or lateral migration of a dune. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. And Linda?
I have to recuse from this. We sort of jumped into it before and I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but I have to recuse from this. This is a long-standing client.
Thank you,
You're down to
Linda.
5.
Okay. All right. Like an Agatha Christie novel. So, Brian, you're up.
Thank you. Let me just make sure I can lower my hand. There we go. Yeah, so certainly understand and appreciate the feedback from the commission. Maybe just to review a couple aspects. So what may not be entirely clear. So that there may be some erosion at the top of the dune crest with some material either sloughing off onto the beach or potentially some landward migration of windblown sand. But the dune crest itself varies in height across the property about 2.5 to 9.5 feet. As Paul was explaining, the landward edge of the coastal dune is another 45 feet or so north of that dune crest. That whole area is vegetated and stabilized by a mixture of woody species and American beach grass and other species. The toe of the coastal bank, this coastal dune, is static under existing conditions. I guess when you're looking at future projections and the integration of that performance standard, could 10, 20 years down the road, a pool or a structure interfere with the lateral movement of the dune? Possibly, but, is the current makeup of the regulations allow for that sort of projection review 10, 20 years down the road? Obviously the burden's on the applicant to prove that and provide a little bit more detail, but again, there's another 25 feet from the toe of the coastal dune to the existing lawn edge. And the proposed pool itself is set back a little bit further than the house, which is a little bit closer to the dune under existing conditions. But the comments are well received and they can be responded to. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, Mark.
It would appear that there is space to take the pool out of the 100-foot barrier and step back entirely, roughly where the propane tank is. They could move it near the tank or move the tank and put it where the propane tank is. And that would give them more years use of the pool after they move the house again.
So, Brian, would you like to continue while you mull this over, and would that be a help, or should I be, I guess, addressing Paul? I beg your pardon, Paul. And yes, Seth?
Sorry, just as a point of order, because of the new format, it does look like you have participants' hand raised. I don't know if you're taking their testimony, but
No, I don't see any hands raised.
if you go to
I
participants
do
and then
now. I see Steve Cohen's
attendees.
hand raised. Thank you. So thank you, Seth. And Steve, would you like to identify yourself? And
Sure.
yeah.
Stephen Cohen. I represent the applicant. I guess I'm really concerned about what I'm hearing from the board here, because it represents a drastic deviation from the regulations and from the commission's practices and regulations in two ways. First of all, the bylaw about eroding beaches, this structure is outside of the eroding beaches standard, cannot just be applied to any other coastal wetland resource. You can't just say, well, I want to apply that same thing here, there, and everywhere. And I think that the suggestion that a pool 100 feet away from a dune is somehow interfering with its lateral movement is speculative and frankly a little absurd. It is not what the bylaw is talking about. And I think Seth knows it. I think, could the dune move 100 feet someday? Yeah, maybe. And would the pool interfere with that movement at that point? I don't actually think so, because the pool is at grade and a moving dune would just go right over it. And it would hit the house first. But, that's not really what we're talking about with that bylaw. And I think the suggestion, the interpretation that Seth has suggested basically could be applied to any structure, anywhere, at any time, to say that someday the dune might get there. That is not what the regulation says. And it's a little disingenuous to suggest that a pool 100 feet away is interfering with the movement of the dune. I do think that what the commission needs to do is stick to its rules, which is that structures are allowed within 50 feet or outside of 50 feet of the wetland of the buffer zone and outside of the beach erosion calculation. And since we are outside of both of those, this pool should be approvable. If the commission also thinks that the pool is offensive and somewhat ridiculous, that's fine. Those are personal opinions that the commissioners can have, but they're not part of the regulation. And so I would appreciate it if we could review this application under the regulation, which does allow for this pool in this location. To start a standard where someone has to start putting all their structures outside a 100-foot buffer is not currently what the regulations provide for. And I would just hope that the commission would stick to implementation of the regulations and not implementation of what they wish the regulations were, regardless of how they feel about pools or other structures.
Thank you, Stephen.
That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Seth, would you have an additional observation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Stephen. I always respect hearing from you, but actually you've miscategorized my thoughts in this circumstance. My thought is not, or first of all, getting to your first point in that we're somehow applying a eroding bank or beach standard here. That's simply not true. That was just a clarification of the resource areas that were on site, and we're realizing that that does not apply. In terms of the coastal dune performance standard that I mentioned, it's not, I wasn't saying that we can just apply that to any coastal dune anywhere on the island at any timeline. I was saying that it's the burden of the proof on the applicant to prove that that structure won't influence or block landward movement of said dune within the permit lifespan. That's all I'm asking for here. So I just would like the applicant to do that calculation and to show us how that may play a role on this property. And that's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Seth, excuse me. So, so Brian and Paul, would you like to continue for 2 weeks to address Commissioner Engelberg's concern? And
It's,
before I continue, asking if you'd like to continue, I see Brian Swain's hand is up. And I apologize if I'm not calling on people, but this new format apparently is making it hard for me to see who has actually got their hands up. So we'll see if we can iron out these problems before our next meeting. So Brian, you're up.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For the record, Brian Swain, I'm an attorney for an abutter. And just, I guess, wanted to address a couple points to what Seth and Mark had said. Erosion happens overnight. It's not something that takes 20, 30 years to happen. You know, that's evidenced by what occurred at the sewer plant. And if you look at the newspaper, every week we're seeing decimated pictures of the South Shore. And this particular area is specifically declared by the town to be a well-known, excellent example of temperate zone heaths, moorlands. It's a representation of an extremely fragile environment. It's endangered landform in North America, and it's literally eroding away at an unprecedented rate. Proposing to disturb this landform to construct an unnecessary luxury accessory feature is only going to expedite the erosion of this area. We did submit a letter in opposition, and I believe you have it as part of the record. I won't waste too much time going through it, but in summary, our concerns are that the applicant should really engage a geologist to get some coring samples to properly identify the dynamic bank and or coastal dune crest. The results of these samples should be noted on the plan. I know Paul did go out there recently, but a lot's changed since January 9th, and a lot's going to change every day as long as we keep having more and more storms. It is proposed to be sited on the edge of the 50-foot no disturb buffer. There's a question as to whether or not that line's going to grow between now and the next meeting. But ultimately, using heavy equipment to go in there and having the spoils go around the pool, there's no way really to safeguard that the 50-foot no disturb buffer is going to remain undisturbed. If allowed, putting the pool in this area, it's going to occupy an already disturbed area, but in turn, it's going to displace the human activity to different parts of the property that are undisturbed, and it will eventually create new disturbances. It's in a natural heritage and endangered species habitat. Using heavy equipment in there is inappropriate. The maintenance of the pool could cause pollution to property, the immediate surrounding, the abutter's property, the public beach, or municipal aquifers water supply. You know, for those reasons, and based upon the evidence we submitted in the form of the photograph today, we'd ask that there be significant research performed by the applicant to show what exactly the state of the dune or the bank is, if it's a dune or a bank. There's questions about that, and have new accurate resource demarcations provided for on a plan. And for those reasons and other reasons, we'd ask you to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. I see, RJ, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Golding. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. I have a few comments on this. First is, as this conversation was progressing, I was looking through the coastal dune regs, and I'm curious why this is being measured from the crest of the coastal dune. There have been a lot of projects involved with coastal dunes that have come through this commission over the years, and it's always been from where the dune has been flagged, which is right around 50 feet from where the pool is proposed. We just don't, I haven't typically seen crest of the dune used before. In your bylaw, it talks about how important the volume and slope of the dune is, which is why you measure it from the base to whatever you're building. So I actually think that the commission should be measuring that distance from the toe of the dune to whatever's being proposed, which is about half the distance. And with that in mind, the commission should be looking for an updated erosion rate. And to the points on Mr. Cohen and Commissioner Engelborg, in your definition of a dune as well, it says on retreating shorelines, the ability of coastal dunes bordering a coastal beach to move landward at a rate of shoreline retreat allow these dunes to maintain their form and volume. So it is incredibly important to know the most recent erosion rate of the beach and know that is directly tied to the dune's retreat. The dune is supplying sand to that retreating beach. So between that and the fact that I actually think this distance to the pool should be measured from the edge of the dune, the edge of the resource area, just like we do with everything else, except for maybe a coastal bank. This is tied directly into what the beach is doing. And after what we've seen and the photos that have been submitted, it's really critical for the commission to think of the beach and the dune as a unit and figure out exactly how quickly it's moving towards this proposed structure and act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. Stephen Cohen, would you like to reply or add?
I have a very brief comment. I don't want to get into the full back and forth about what Brian Swain submitted, because Paul submitted, I think, a point-by-point letter that addresses and sort of dismantles the arguments that were made. But I do want to clarify one thing that Brian said, which was the suggestion that the 50-foot buffer zone is a no disturb zone. That is not correct. The 50-foot buffer zone is the no structure zone. And of course, disturbances are allowed between the 25 and the 50. So these arguments that you can't have any disturbances past that 50-foot line are not a correct presentation of the bylaw. The no disturb zone, of course, is the 0 to 25. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So, Brian and Paul, what would you
Sure.
like to do?
And Paul Santos again.
Yeah.
We are going to ask for a continuance to address specifically the performance standards in the bylaw with regard to coastal dunes that Seth had raised. I just want to make one last point with regard to RJ and the dimensional requirements. All the dimensions and the setbacks on the plan that you have before you are in accordance with the regulations. Nothing has been measured differently in this application. This application is complete compliance with the standard regulations for dune setbacks and so forth. Having said that, we are going to ask for a continuance.
Thank you, Paul. And can you make sure that the illustration that you showed on the screen can be included for our meeting on the 15th, because it wasn't included in the package. Well, I didn't see it in my package anyway.
Which illustration are you referring to?
The one that had the dune line from the 9th of January, was it?
Oh, that was, okay. That was actually in the response to the Brian Swain.
Okay. All right, I missed it.
It was in the packet, but at the end. So, but that's no problem.
Gotcha.
We'll update. We'll get that to you.
Thank you. Okay, so on that note, continued until February the 15th. So that brings us on to Great Harbor Yacht Club, 96 Washington Street. So,
okay.
Yes, Leo, good evening.
Good evening. Leo Azadorian with Blackwell and Associates, and I believe Richard Fitzgerald from AGM is also on this meeting with me. I don't see him up there right now. In any case, we had our first hearing on the 4th. And since then, we did finally receive a revised letter from the Division of Marine Fisheries. And Richard did speak with them directly. And we did look into the materials being used for this. There's not a lot of literature in the United States. I did find a 87-page report in Canada, but it's way beyond my 1 year of college chemistry to understand it. But I did submit additional information on the 26th of last month, and I pointed out areas in the Commonwealth where this material has been used on Nantucket, been used at Woods Hole. It was also used at the Mass Clean Energy Center. So it's something that it's been vetted. If anybody had a problem with it, especially Division of Marine Fisheries, would have spoke up at this point in time. And so we just feel that what needs to be done in there is to maintain the integrity of that pier. And I just wanted to say also that that pier and travel lift, especially the travel lift, the town of Nantucket has an emergency access easement from Washington Street down to the pier itself. And the purpose of that is at any point in time, the Nantucket Harbor Master to determine that there's an emergency where boats have to be hauled out. And that travel lift, especially the decking, I looked at it the other day, and it really needs attention. This whole pier needs attention. If we weren't allowed to do the work in a timely manner, we just don't know what's going to happen to that travel lift. That travel lift lifts out boats up to 1.5 tons, plus the weight of that. I know that they've had to do some work shimming the piles underneath it, because piles do settle. It doesn't matter whether you're in downtown Boston or Nantucket, piles do settle, so they needed attention. But the work that AGM is proposing has been done actively through the Commonwealth over a period of time. So I just wanted to point that out from the very beginning. Other than that, we did, like I say, we did look into it. We did find information regarding and reports, but like I say, nothing United States, a very extensive report by Canada using that material in a marine environment. And it's used. Canada allows it. And again, it's been used in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I can't believe that at this point in time, where it's been used all over the state on the coastal areas, no one's ever, brought up any issue regarding, the material, that denso wrap around the piles and the steel piles itself. And other than that, again, I don't know if is Richard on right now, if he can add anything to that.
Mr. Fitzgerald, do you?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I don't see a hand raised, but
I tried to raise it. I don't know where it went.
don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to also describe the construction method. The piles are going to be wrapped with this petrolatum tape underwater and then topside using divers and topside personnel. But after the petrolatum tape is put on, then the tape is covered with a fiberglass jacket that is also put on by divers underwater and then personnel topside. So the petrolatum tape will be encapsulated and won't be in contact with any water. Plus, it's an insoluble material, so it doesn't dissolve in water. It just sits there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Leo, for your efforts to dig down deeper into the subject. So are there any questions from commissioners? Yes, Mark.
Thank you. A question for, I guess, for Leo. did you work into your calculations? I think it was in a planning board approval years ago that the capacity of the travel lift must be able to handle the Coast Guard 47-foot boat, which is, I think, more than 1.5 tons. I pretty sure that was an approval with the planning board when they got the easement for that travel lift. So that whole way from landward to out over the water must be able to handle. I'm pretty sure it was the Coast Guard 47-foot boat.
Yes, Leo.
Yeah, I do know that the travel lift that was there when the travel pier was constructed is not the same one, and there was a new one constructed and excuse me, a new one purchased to handle larger boats. I don't know the capacity of it, but I do know that we had to alter the curbing at the yacht club property to accommodate this larger travel lift. I could look into that. I think, as I recall, it would lift out 1.5 ton boats. Again, I don't recall, and I do remember vaguely the issue with the Coast Guard boats of whether they could haul them out or not, but we can certainly look into that. Again, you know, that's something that we would have to get the specifications of the Coast Guard boats and whether they could fit in, you know, the slip between the two travel lift piers itself. But I believe that the travel lift that's out there right now can lift a 1.5 ton boat. I think that's what it's rated at. And it's bigger than the original travel lift that was there.
Just to follow up, Ian, if I may.
Sure.
Ian, Leo, I wasn't trying to have you specify the travel lift capacity. That's not our goal here. Our goal is to make sure that the way to the travel lift can handle the weight and is secure. That's all. So the travel lift capacity is a different conversation. It's important for sure, but I just wanted to make sure that you had built into your plans the weight of the boat along that way to the waterfront. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, you're absolutely right, Mark, but if this is true, Leo, I would have thought that the Coast Guard boat probably weighs 20 tons. So
it's heavy.
You know, it's got twin turbo diesels, hasn't it, and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know whether you want to close or whether you want to continue.
Well, I'd like to get a sense of the commission members themselves to see how they feel about it. Again, we'd like to get to the work as soon as possible because it is going to take some time, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the pier. I did look at a August 2022 report by Childs Engineering where they did a very extensive review of the pier and the piles themselves, and they were recommending that this work be done within a few years. So looking at it again, I'm more concerned about the safety factor of the club members, the boats, the pier, and as well as the travel lift and the travel lift operator, that that thing is in tip-top shape, that we're not going to experience a problem, you know, down the road where it becomes a life or death or health issue. So that's my feeling on it right now. And again, the operation of the boat yard itself was sidetracked for this yacht club, but at the same time, the yacht club did accommodate the travel lift for hauling boats in and out, especially in an emergency. So, you know, that's my thought on the matter, that the work is done in a timely manner. And again, if the commission sees that we need to extend for 2 weeks, then we'll extend for 2 weeks. I can supply some additional information, but like I say, I read some of that reports, and my year of college chemistry doesn't allow me to interpret a lot of that information that's on there as well.
Thank you, Leo. And I think, as Mark made, that's beyond our purview. So I'm happy to entertain a motion to close unless, Seth, you have anything additional to add. No. And Joe?
I'll make a motion to close.
Thank you, Joe. Seconded by Mark Beal. Thank you, Mark. So by roll call vote, Mark Beal.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank you, Leo.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
you.
So that brings us on to Third Point Holdings LLC, 39 Quays Road, Art Gasparo. Good evening, Art.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm before the commission tonight with a notice of intent application to shore up or essentially put in a new steel bulkhead in front of a failing timber bulkhead that exists fronting along Nantucket Harbor along this property at 39 Quays Road. And we've explored various alternatives, which I detailed in the filing, as to what we thought would be the best way in terms of least impact to the environment and to meet the protected interests. And so what's shown on the plan in front of you is in red. We would propose to drive steel sheeting seaward of the existing timber bulkhead, so that we wouldn't have to rip out the old bulkhead and cause the existing coastal bank that is shored up there to collapse, and then to put pilings in front of that to help provide additional stability as exists on the property to the west to match that condition. And then also proposed is a set of beach stairs to provide access to the bank, so that it's sort of channeled pedestrian activity to one spot, and not have people trying to walk down that bank to get to the beach or the top of the bulkhead. We understand the concerns with coastal engineering structures in general. They exist along this entire shoreline in quays, as I believe you're all very familiar with. And so our hope is that this is essentially responsible maintenance by coming in and being proactive to install this before the timber rots out any further and essentially starts to fail further than what exists now. Our proposal would be to match the top of the timber that's there now, that has some additional timbers on top of it, and then to put a cap that covers both the new steel sheeting as well as the existing bulkhead. And again, very similar to the condition that it exists directly to the west. This is quite similar to other applications that have been approved, including a few properties over to the east. Just a couple of years ago, I believe many of you sat and reviewed that application, which I believe was a successful install. A certificate of compliance had been issued for that project. We would, for construction access, be able to work from, we show it on the plan on the west side of the house, so we could come in the existing driveway, put some plates if we need to over the septic system, and then work from the top of the bank, some small machinery down on the bank as needed along the top, and then we would restore any disturbed areas where we wouldn't be proposing to fill the bank. We would use supplemental clean sand if needed to restore grade, and then to plant American beach grass through those disturbed areas. And with that, I'd be happy to try to address additional questions, comments, or concerns if you have any.
Thank you, Art. Comments from commissioners? Yes, Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I've been vocal about bulkheads in the past, but that's not my comment today. My comment is the last time that, or one of the last times that we had a bulkhead application come in, it was for FRP sheet rather than steel. And since then, I did a lot of research on FRP and its potential benefits. And it seems, although I'm not an engineer and don't claim to be one, it seems like it's has a much better strength to weight ratio than steel and lasts longer in a marine environment. And, you know, it's the goal of the commission to put projects in that require less maintenance over time and less disturbance. So I was wondering if the applicant here would consider that FRP sheet rather than the steel sheet here.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I certainly will
Oh.
investigate that, further and discuss it with both the contractor and the owner and see what we can come up with.
Thank you, Art. Any further questions? So I assume, Art, that the house was built in 1999, according to the property records. So certainly no statutory protection involved. And so I assume the wooden bulkhead was there to protect the house that was there previously. Am I correct?
Yeah, I believe this house was subject to a fire and the house had previously existed. So the 1990 house, as I understand it, was a replacement of a pre-existing structure. I could get into greater details on that as well as the age of the bulkhead, but that was my understanding, is that there was a pre-78 structure on the property, and but certainly we could further investigate that.
Well, thank you, because I'm not keen on that bulkhead being replaced with steel at all. So I prefer that we chose a less hard solution if possible. So more information would be a help. Yes, Art.
If I may, I mean, the situation there, I understand that the vertical hard, coastal engineering structure is, not always, favored, or, that we should look at alternatives there. And in this setting, the challenge is that you're in between two vertical, you're sandwiched in this situation between existing structures of that same sort. So how do you make that change to something else that doesn't then negatively impact the abutting properties, or and still provides the same level of protection to the structure that exists on the property? But we can certainly invest, I tried to include that alternatives analysis for you, that we did look at those, what else kind of could we do here? And again, a lot of that gets into ripping out what's there. And how would you grade that back, and how would you stop? We can't do something that's going to cause, and I don't think the commission would want to permit something that's going to, result in a degradation of the abutting properties either, that have vertical coastal engineering structures that run right up to the property line. So I understand your point, and I also think this is very much one of those, you have to, every site is a bit different, and you have to really look at the conditions that you're faced in. We can't just take the property in a vacuum. But I will get you a little bit more information on both of the points that have been raised.
Well, thank you, Art. But you do make a persuasive case, I have to say. Any further questions from commissioners or members of the public? So seeing none, continue until the 15th of February.
15th, please. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ian, I have a
yes.
question for you.
Yeah.
I missed the first 2 minutes of the meeting. Wesco Place continued?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, as was the Carol W. Dean Revocable Trust at 48 West Meyer Comet Road, as was the Manillas at Gingy Lane. And
Gotcha.
yeah,
That's good. Thank you. All set.
okay. So that brings us on to New England Development, 19 North Water Street, Lot 7 and Lot 11A, Lot 7 first. Paul Santos.
Okay.
You want to take them together or separately?
I would love to take them together, but that's up to the. But we'll start with Lot 7. That's the first one on the agenda.
Okay.
But
I think we have to take them separately.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
So, thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant, White Elephant Hotel Residences LLC, care of New England Development. This application is for the proposed construction of a single-family dwelling with associated grading, landscaping, and utilities within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The lot itself was part of a subdivision endorsed by the Nantucket Planning Board in August of 2017. So the plan that you're looking at there depicts a number of lots that were approved as part of a subdivision. This would be the first lot within that subdivision that's actually come before you to be developed. The area itself, subject property is located on the south side of White Elephant Way. It is approximately 5,005 square feet, and it occurs essentially within the maintained lot area west of South Beach Street, in the area of the White Elephant residences. So that large lawn area that has the actual statue of the white elephant in the front is the specific area that we are talking about. The reason we're here is the subject lot is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. We are in a AE zone, specifically AE 8. So the flood zone elevation in this particular area is elevation 8. The lot itself is graded at about elevation 7, approximately elevation 7. And by way of reference, South Beach Street is down at approximately elevation 3. So it is somewhat higher than South Beach Street. It's in an area, obviously, that we typically do not see flooding within at this elevation. That being said, it is in the flood zone, and the property and the dwelling will be designed in accordance with local, state, and FEMA regulations with regard to construction within a flood zone. It will be a foundation system, no basement, with appropriate flood vents for the size of the existing structure. The structure itself is approximately 1,610 square footprint area. The area itself already has a complete utility infrastructure located within it. The site would be serviced by town water, town sewer, and there's also an extensive existing drainage system within this particular property. Roof drains would be connected to the drainage system, and then we would be connecting, obviously, to public water and public sewer. The plan that you have before you, the shaded area represents the proposed dwelling. There'd be a driveway off of essentially the subdivision right-of-way or roadway that enters in off of South Beach Street. There is an existing access drive into the property, and then related landscape decking and so forth that goes along with the building itself. The basic grades are being maintained of the existing lawn area. Obviously, some grading will take place adjacent to the building to get code compliance with regard to the stairways and so forth. The first floor elevation is proposed in this particular case at elevation 10.5. As I said, average grade around the lawn area is about 7, and the flood zone is about 8. That's essentially the extent of the application. These are intended to be single-family residences, and essentially that's the extent. The application itself does set forth the impacts with regard to the regulated area, which is the land subject to coastal storm flowage. We do go through in detail and specifically lay out the performance standards. And in our opinion, the application complies with the applicable regulations of both the Act and the bylaw. Project will have no adverse effect on flood control, as floodwaters will not be displaced in association with the proposed activities. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have with this first lot, which is lot 7 on White Elephant Way.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from commissioners? So the drain line that connects the roof drains, does that go into the town sewer system?
No, I believe it's connected. Hold on, let me get up here. It's connected to the drainage system, but it's got a series of water quality units that were installed. It's not into the sewer system though, but it is connected into the municipal drainage system, but with a pretty extensive set of water quality units, separators and so forth. The majority of the drainage, there is a significant amount of drainage within the White Elephant Way subdivision roadway that was previously approved as part of the subdivision.
Because the water table is, what, 2 feet below the surface or something?
In this area, it's high. I'm not sure whether it's 2 feet or not, but the system itself, these structures would all be designed on a foundation, but with helical piles. So there will be helical pile system underneath it.
I'm just curious about, in a storm, how much water it's going to get saturated and flooding if the rainwater has nowhere to go. So that's why the drain just seems to end. And so I was just asking for clarification rather
Oh,
than
no,
engineering.
not gonna, yeah, it's connected to a free flowing drain line. Yeah, and the drain line that you see on the plan kind of ends, but that's because it's connected into the drain line that's existing for the subdivision.
Thank you. Yes, Mark.
Just a comment, Paul. White Elephant Way, wouldn't it be called Harbor House Way?
That I don't know, Mark, but it's called White Elephant Way, so yeah.
We've forgotten everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so and if do we have everything to close, Will?
Yes, we do, if I can only find my unmute button.
Paul, would you like to close?
Yes, actually, we've received our DEP file number, so we'd love to close.
Excellent. A motion to close, please. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tim. By roll call vote, Mark Beal.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Joe Pendosky.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye, and I'm with you, Mark, Harbor House Way.
What were they thinking?
I don't know. I still miss the Harbor House.
Well,
And
we all, Mad
Ian
Hatter too.
Golden. All right, guys.
Mention the Mad Hatter.
I worked on it as a youth. Okay. And Ian Golding,
Sorry.
aye. If we're going
Sorry,
down
sorry.
memory lane. So Paul, thank you for letting us chime in. And then the next is 19 North Water Street, lot 11A.
Thank you again. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the White Elephant Hotel Residences LLC, care of New England Development. Once again, this is lot 11A on a subdivision that was approved and endorsed by the Nantucket Planning Board on August 14th of 2017. This lot is located on the south side of White Elephant Way. Again, the site itself is in a flood zone, being flood zone AE elevation 8. Elevation of South Beach Street is approximately elevation 3. This site rises from elevation 3 to about elevation 5. So it's a little bit lower than lot 7 previously discussed. The building is shown shaded. It is a 1,660 square foot footprint, which would be constructed on a concrete foundation with appropriate flood vents. The system would be constructed with a helical pile base underneath the footings due to groundwater material and so forth. Once again, this building would be tied to public water, public sewer, and the roof drain and all the drainage will be tied into the existing drainage system. Access to the site would be from an internal driveway, similar to lot 11, but it would be fronting, if you would, on White Elephant Way. This one is right at the corner of South Beach and White Elephant Way. Again, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from commissioners? And seeing none, I take it you'd be happy to close, Paul?
Yes, I do have a DEP file number for this lot also, and we would like to.
Excellent. A motion to close by Mark Beal and seconded by Joe Plandowski. By roll call vote, Mark Beal.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Joe Plandowski.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
So that brings us on to amended orders of conditions. 8 High Brush Path LLC, 8 High Brush Path. And Brian Madden. Joe, sorry, Brian, can you just, Joe has put his hand up, I believe. Is there?
It didn't belong there.
Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. Please go ahead.
No worries. Thank you. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. The amendment request before you is to modify the approved crawl space foundation to a full foundation for the garage addition, which is kind of on the adjacent to the loop driveway. So the garage addition is at the closest point 85 feet away from the bordering vegetated wetlands to the northeast. You can see the 100-foot buffer zone straddles through the middle portion of the structure. So, half of it's within the 100-foot, the other half's outside. Proposed high groundwater has been documented based on the adjacent perk test performed out there at elevation 22.8. We are proposing to revise the bottom footing of the foundation down to 21.33. What we're proposing is a waterproofed foundation. During the installation of the foundation, excess water will be dewatered to an area within the lawn, encircled by straw bales to contain that and allow it to infiltrate naturally. It's a minimal intrusion into high groundwater. I took a look at the soil logs for the perk tests that were performed out there. There's no clay or silty, loamy material that is restrictive that would prohibit proper drainage. It's coarse sand below with a seasonal high groundwater table. What I also submitted was a profile of the building foundation to give you a sense of how everything interrelated to high groundwater. And Will, I don't know if you're able to pull that up easily. I was kind of talk you through the.
Oh, I may have just pinned myself by mistake, hitting too many buttons.
No worries.
Brian, I was just responding to an email. What was that you were looking for?
Oh yeah, just the next sheet down. I just wanted to pull that up. Appreciate it. Thank you. So this is the building section that just gives you a little profile of the foundation. And so the bottom of the footing there you can see is at 21.33 with a 12-inch deep footing, and the basement floor elevation is at 22.67 with a 4-inch thick slab at the basement. So the intrusion into high groundwater is 18 inches approximately, a little less than 18 inches actually. 12 inches of that is the perimeter 12-inch deep footing. So the actual intrusion into high groundwater is very minimal associated with the basement. And again, that's a seasonal high within coarse sand. As proposed, there's going to be no permanent dewatering or need for that. Again, it's a waterproof foundation. And we believe that it's not going to have an adverse effect on groundwater. Again, this is minimally within the 100-foot buffer zone, pretty far set back. But we are requesting the waiver for no adverse effect. And with that, I'll turn over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from commissioners? Yes, Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Brian, for your presentation, but I don't feel comfortable with this application as presented. We're talking about an area not only when we're in the 2-foot separation to high groundwater, but we're actually in the groundwater itself. And even by the applicant's own application, own submission, there is going to be documented displacement of groundwater. They're saying it's temporary, that may be true or may end up not be true. But I think that performance standard is in our regulations for a reason. I know some people have had questions about, is the 2-foot separation the right amount? But I think, I don't want to speak for the whole commission, but I think there's pretty much agreement among this commission that actual intrusion into groundwater causes adverse impacts for vegetated wetlands. And as I've said before, as we get sea level rise pushing groundwater up closer to the surface, it's only going to become more impactful. So I certainly don't support this amendment as proposed. I think that there is an adverse impact and there's a reasonable alternative because, the ability to have a crawl space foundation versus a full foundation doesn't change the ability to have a structure on site. A house with a crawl space and a house with a basement are materially similar. And we should be concerned here with the adverse impacts to the groundwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. And Tim?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Seth. I don't see the standards there for a reason. Whether it's a good standard or not, nobody really knows, but it's there for a reason. I think it should be complied with.
Thank you, Tim. Mark?
I concur. I think going into the groundwater is above and beyond what we could approve, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mark. Brian?
Thank you all. Will, if you don't mind just putting up that building section, I'd like to ask a general question question through the chair to, when we're reviewing this, trying to sharpen the pencil. So the basement floor is at 22.67. Again, high groundwater's been documented at 22.8. If we were able to raise the basement floor elevation above that 22.8, and we only had the perimeter 12-inch footing, is that something that the commission would consider? I'll ask the question. Appreciate any responses if you're able.
So let me get this straight. You're saying that you're going to, how high are you planning? Are you suggesting you raise it beyond the current drawing?
So it would take the full basement outside of above high groundwater. So there would be a minimal intrusion into high groundwater for the 12-inch perimeter footing, but not the basement structure itself. And again, that goes around the perimeter. And so you avoid that larger displacement into high groundwater.
Comments from commissioners? Linda, I see your hand up.
I'd consider that.
And thank you, Linda. Seth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My personal opinion is that the actual footing should be at least at or above the groundwater elevation. I think that having the true basement above the groundwater elevation is a positive improvement over having it in the groundwater, but I don't think it mitigates the fact that there's still adverse impacts from the footing. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Mark?
I think we're gone a little beyond what our role is to sit here and redesign the garage addition basement. I think the application as submitted probably is insufficient. I think we should send the applicant back to the drawing board and come back with a plan that is more approvable by us.
Well, that sums it up, I would say, Brian.
No, again, thank you all for the feedback. This is good insight. So I will request a continuance to the 15th.
Okay, to February the 15th?
Yes, please.
And just, Ian?
Yes.
So Brian, your current plan B is that you'll be at groundwater versus, and you'll be asking for a waiver from the 2-foot separation.
I'll have to review with the client, but we will explore that alternative.
I think you'd find support for above the 2-foot, but you may find some squirrely members if you're below the 2 feet. Just saying.
I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So that brings us on to requests for determination of applicability. NRI Retail LLC Straight Wolf. Paul Santos.
Again, thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of NIR Retail LLC, care of New England Development. This is a request for determination of applicability. Project Locus is currently an existing utility shed on the south side of Straight Wharf, located in the vicinity of Straight Wharf Restaurant and the Highline Ticket Office. The surrounding land use is residential commercial. So this, when you're walking to the Highline on Straight Wharf, this is the first small utility shed on the right-hand side. It's right adjacent to the former ticket booth, or what is now an information booth, on the south side of the wharf itself. The application is to propose to elevate the utility equipment within the existing utility shed located on Straight Wharf, thereby requiring the addition of a small dormer to the shed itself. The work is at the request of the town of Nantucket wiring inspector. The shed is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, within a 100-foot buffer zone to the coastal bank, which is essentially the bulkhead, and land containing shellfish. The construction of the dormer is located above and outside of the floodplain. There'll be no direct or indirect impacts to any wetland resource areas. Therefore, it is our opinion that a notice of intent is not required. I did submit, they are currently before the HDC. And Will, do you have the actual building elevation that may kind of shed some light on what we're doing here?
Sorry, Paul, through you, Ian, is that in this submission, or was that a separate?
It was a separate that we had sent to Lisa.
Let me just take.
And if you don't have it, I can kind of walk you through. It's pretty straightforward.
Let me keep looking, but I don't have it in my folder, but I may have it in my email.
Okay. So what essentially they're doing is the shed stays as it is. They're going to go internally and raise the utility equipment to get it up, not completely out of the flood zone, but to a spot where the wiring inspector is more comfortable with it. And then to do that, in order to make required clearances and so forth for the utility equipment, the intent, they have to create that small dormer. You'll see it right there, the 3 windows and the small dormer. That's actually facing the wharf. That is a requirement to maintain the mechanical separation distances from the structure to the utilities within inside the existing shed. So that's the extent of the work. We filed it as an RDA. Majority of the work is happening within the confines of the shed, and then the small work on the roof itself. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from commissioners? Paul, do you have a staff recommendation? I mean, sorry, Will, do you have a staff recommendation?
Yes. We were recommending a -3, approving them to do the work. And no, sorry, I'm mincing my words here. There's no adverse impact to the resource area.
Great. So a motion to approve this request for determination of applicability. Thank you, Joe. Seconded by Tim. By roll call vote. Mark Beal.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Joe Pandowski.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Ian Golding. Aye. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So that brings us on to minor mods. Jones, 6E Lincoln Avenue. And who do we have? I don't see anyone jumping into the breach here.
Someone should be on for this. It says Blackwell on the agenda, but if there's nobody here, I'm guessing we should continue it to the next meeting.
All right, we'll certainly continue it to put it at the bottom of the list in case someone appears. So the second one is Hawks End LLC, S Island. Brian?
Thank you very much. So the proposed modification is to the shed that was previously approved back in September. The applicant had received some clarification from the Zoning Board of Appeals staff on zoning setbacks. and what is being applied is a 10-yard setback, which enabled the structure to move further to the south, away from the resource area. The increased setback has been moved. It was at the 50-foot buffer zone as approved. Now it's at 53 feet. And the revision has also enabled all work to be located outside the 50-foot buffer zone to the coastal dune. And as you can see there, the shed overlaps with the existing grass driveway. So there's no further encroachment or alteration to natural vegetation out there. The shed is going to continue to be elevated on helical pile foundation. And as proposed, it's an improvement over what was previously approved. Now, turn over to questions.
Questions from commissioners? What's happening to the driveway?
Well, it's a loop driveway, so they're just basically going to abandon the easterly end of it. Yeah.
Okay. Any observations from anyone? So a motion to approve this minor mod. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Joe. By roll call vote, Mark Beal. Tim Brain, Mark?
Aye.
Aye.
Tim Brain, aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams. Linda? Linda is temporarily.
Aye.
Thank you, Linda. Ian Golding, aye. And great. Thank you, Brian. So
Thank
this
you.
brings us on to Nantucket Islands Land Bank, Magnolia Avenue and 2020 Ocean Avenue. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening. How are you? Thank you very much for hearing this tonight. My name is Rachel Freeman. I'm representing the Nantucket Islands Land Bank here with a minor modification to the design of our stairs at the end of Magnolia Ave. Originally, the design included a mid-center landing, and we're requesting to remove that, as well as to switch from helical piers to sonotubes, because installation of the helical piers will require machinery, which could be basically extensively disturbing the bank. And we feel like this is a more environmentally friendly way of going about it. I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions from commissioners? So I have one as I approach being semi-infirm with knee issues. I know you don't want to hear about it. I went down to look at the geotubes today, and I was quite thankful for the being able to pause halfway down on the steps. So what is the total run of the steps?
The total run, I can't actually tell you off the top of my head. It's pretty extensive. It is a steep set of stairs. We will be we will not include a bench halfway down. I'm sorry. The design simply ended up being too costly to install and too extensive. So at this point, we have it set up so that it's basically our like kind replacement for what was there.
Okay.
The only change is the top will be a slightly larger platform at the top.
Fair enough. I'll just sit on the steps then if I need to.
Okay. Thank you for understanding.
Linda, your hand is up.
Can you please put the picture up again for a second? Okay. I was going to say, if they were straight down, that's not code. You
No,
have to
they're
actually
not.
have a landing. You
Yes,
have landings
there are
on the way
landings
down.
to keep fit to code. We just originally, as we sort of have a top landing that's extensive and has space for a bench, we had a mid landing that was extensive with space for a bench. But it basically became too much disturbance and cost prohibitive. And we decided that like-kind replacement would work better in this situation.
Because I'm in the same boat with Ian. I was a catcher. I got nothing for knees. So
Sorry
it
to-
really is very helpful to be able to stop, but at least you have the landings. And I was just wanted to make sure you have the code compliant landings.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So Linda, we can sit down together.
Yeah. We'll just sit on the bench, sit on the stair.
There we go.
Tongues will wag.
Okay. So a motion to approve this minor mod. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Joe. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Rachel.
much.
That brings us on to 196 Hummock Pond Road, LLC, 196 Hummock Pond Road. David Haynes, good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you all doing? It's a long night for all of us. This is a minor mod request at 196 Hummock Pond Road. There's been a few minor changes, some omissions or changes. Yeah, I gotta get my tongue straight. Excuse me. We're asking for 3 additions and 3 actually removals. First of all, the garage has been reduced in size, slid slightly closer to the 50 foot, but still outside of 50 foot. It's been reduced from about 1,000 square feet to 400 and something square feet. There was also a patio just on the south side of that, or the southeast side of that, a pea stone patio that extended inside of 50, that has been eliminated. The other pea stone patio next to the house, on the corner of the house, is the eastern corner of the house there, has a we've incorporated a wooden step into that, again outside of 50 feet, but it is a minor change. The other patio, the stone patio, the dry laid stone patio on the southeast side of the house, has been expanded slightly. It does extend slightly into the 50 foot, but since it's a dry laid stone patio, it's not considered a structure and meets the performance standards. Down to the southeast of this approved pool, some dry laid stone steps have been incorporated into that slope, all in existing lawn. It does extend it slightly into the 50 foot setback, but again, it's not considered a structure, so it does meet the performance standards. There was a retaining wall around the southwest side of the house and between the house and Hummock Pond Road that has been eliminated. We've gotten away from that. Also, the pool equipment, which was outside of 50, but between the house and the stone steps, has been eliminated. So a few minor things, tweaking and adjustments, all meets the performance standards, all within the original limit of work. Some things have been eliminated, some things have been added, but just a small tweaking. With that, no adverse impact. The site is stable, and everything is proceeding. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, David. Any questions from commissioners? So, seeing none, a motion to approve this minor mod, please. Thank you, Joe. Seconded by Thank you, Mark. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank you, David. Enjoy
Thank
your
you very
evening.
much. You too. Thanks.
And the minor mod, Jones, 60 Lincoln Avenue is going to be continued until February 15th. So there are no certificates of compliance, and so that brings us on to orders of condition. And the first one is, I believe, the Great Harbor Yacht Club, 96 Washington Street.
Ian, sorry to interrupt. We skipped
Okay.
something.
What?
We have 2 extensions of orders.
We do. They were listed done beyond after orders of conditions. You'd like to take them first?
Oh, I lied. That's my fault. Ignore me, please.
Oh, I wouldn't dream of it.
Also, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, yes,
Jeff is away in Vermont on the one on Jones, 6 East Lincoln, so they asked to have it continued.
great. Thank you, Linda. So, all right. So, I think since we might as well proceed, in the order in which the agenda is, published, the first order of conditions would be Great Harbor Yacht Club, 96 Washington Street. Do you have your hand up, Joe, or is that an
No,
oversight?
it's stuck there.
Ah, okay.
All right. I just had our conditions 18 and 19 on here. I'm not sure if we may want to add anything additional.
Any suggestions, Joe?
Yes, I do have a question, and that is in 19, the end of the last sentence, disposed of off property. Is that what we want that to be dumped into the neighbor's yard, maybe?
No.
Where do we
It
want
seemed-
the invasive things to go?
I seem to remember at one point we updated this to read that
And
it's supposed
disposed
to be
according to
disposed of.
regulations, according to best practices.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think we did actually. Seth, do you remember?
So there was a discussion about the type of material. I think there was like a discussion of if you take Japanese black pine and you chip it up until it's no longer viable as a seed source anymore, does it have to go to the Nantucket landfill? So I think it's a lot different than if you have like active seed heads on a invasive grass. So I think it should say appropriately disposed of off-site according to best practices, because we don't want it to be on-site.
Thank you. Great. So a motion to approve as modified. And Joe, thank you. And seconded by Tim. Thank you, Tim. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. And that brings us on to Third Point Holdings LLC, 39 Quays Road. No, it doesn't. I beg your pardon. My mistake. That's continued until February the 15th. So New England Development, 19 North Water Street, lot 7.
All right, so we have conditions 18 and 19, and I just quickly updated 19 to match what we just talked about.
Right. Thank you. Any further provisions come to mind
I'll move for approval.
as modified? Yes, Seth.
Sorry.
Cool.
Let me just check one thing. This is a project completely within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm satisfied with how it's drafted.
Great. So would you like to second Mark's motion to approve as modified?
Second.
Thank you. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. And that brings us on to New England Development, 19 North Water Street, lot 11A.
Very similar situation. Couple different numbers.
There we go. All right. A motion to approve as modified. Thank you, Joe. Seconded by Mark. Thank you, Mark. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. That brings us on to extension of orders.
Mr. Chairman, a question. Ray Pohl just texted me and he's trying to register and be let into the queue. Does anybody see him in the queue? He's representing because Jeff is away.
I now see his, yes, I now
There he
see
is.
his.
He's
hand
in
up.
now.
He's in now. Great.
Can you folks hear me?
Yes, Ray, please
Great.
introduce yourself and go ahead for 3 Wires Way.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is Ray Pohl for the record. Jeff Blackwell is out of town. That's why he hasn't been appearing. And so he appointed me his proxy for this. So we're just looking for extensions on some approvals that were granted a while ago for the 2 lots on Wires Way. And so I think I don't think, I've been told that we are within the 3-year extension, just given Governor Baker's extension onto the 3-year normal extension time period. So I'm here to answer questions if there are any. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ray. And I assume it's the identical argument for 3B Wires Way as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Seth?
I'll make a motion to issue the extension for both 3 and 3B Wires Way.
Thank you. Seconded by Tim Brain. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Pandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank you, Ray, for pitching in.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night. So that brings us on to the public hearing, the discussion of and potential adoption of the Nantucket Wetland Regulations update. And that has been continued until February the 15th, which then brings us on to other business. approval of minutes, January the 4th, 2024, and January the 11th, 2024. Has everybody had a chance to read them? And I just speaking for myself, but I would imagine for the rest of the commission, a real vote of thanks and praise to Elena Cano. Cano, is it? Yes, Will?
I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I just want to second what you're saying, because I know that Elena will hear this as she's taking minutes, but the minutes are very great, and I appreciate the clear format and the flexibility on getting back to our current meetings. So we have a lot of stuff going on right now, and the minutes are quite helpful.
Well said, sir. So a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Linda. Seconded by Joe by roll call vote. Mark Beal.
I abstain from the January 4th one.
Thank you, Mark. Tim Brain.
Yeah, yes, on January 4th, I abstained from January 11th.
Thank you, Tim. Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Joe Plondowski.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Monitoring reports. So we have 8 monitoring reports before us. And I have a question. I have a number of questions for the last monitoring reports of Fogtown Farm, 19 Walwinet Road. More to satisfy my curiosity than anything else, but rather than jumping in, do commissioners have any questions about the other monitoring reports? And Will, do you have an observation to make?
I was just gonna say, just since we have so many, you took the words that I was about to ask. Just if there's any questions about any given monitoring report, we can address them specifically.
So, seeing none, Rachel, thank you for hanging on to this to so long. And Linda, a question or an observation before
We're going to ratify these. I cannot sit on 19. I did their greenhouse for them.
I think it's
19 will win it.
Yeah, I think it's more a question of just accepting them.
Okay, I won't be voting on that one, just so you know.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Seth?
Thank you. Yeah, we don't have to ratify or accept any monitoring
Turn off
reports.
my video.
Only certificates of compliance. Monitoring reports just come in. We can review them if we want, or if not, we don't even have to.
I just want to make sure that I'm just put it on the record.
Okay, thank you, Linda. And so, Rachel, thank you for hanging in.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks to the Land Bank for their comprehensive monitoring reports. And I was curious on sort of the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3, where it says, according to the EPA's review and approval of the TDML, total maximum daily load for nitrogen, excess total nitrogen in the harbor is primarily from sediments and atmospheric deposition. Septic systems, runoff, and fertilizer are lesser causes of the impairments, quote unquote. And that took me by surprise, because I sort of thought that we've been focused so on for septic systems, runoffs, and fertilizer. So what am I missing here? I was hoping you would fill me in.
Well, I think my understanding of this is the EPA's review and approval of the TMDL. So this is partially from reports, basically. I think there's multiple factors that contribute to Pulpus Harbor's, nitrogen issues, and the TMDL is a great place to start if we could achieve that. But in terms of sediments and atmospheric deposition, those are significant contributors. A lot of times what we are finding is that things are coming from sediments themselves. And so, but the ones that we can control fertilizers, we can, have more say in septic systems. Those are things that we can actually impact. So.
Thank you, because, I assumed that they were part of the sediment deposition. And
that is a fair statement. That is a completely fair statement. Yes.
Thank you. And also, when you talk about atmospheric nitrogen, what are the levels in the ocean? What are the levels in the sound, as the base level? So here I am trying to get a handle on it. So thank you for, for listening to me.
Yes, definitely.
Do they provide those, those base levels? Does the EPA actually tell you what the difference is?
No,
as opposed to the sound and the ocean?
No, we have far more information from the SMAS reports and the work that's been done locally, where they've actually really kind of quantified a lot of the water quality in the harbor, which is fantastic. So.
Great. Seth.
Yeah, just quickly, those TMDL reports are pretty interesting to read if you want to get some light reading done over the winter break or whatever. But it is important to remember that each water body experiences different loads. So it's not to say that fertilizer and septics aren't important to mitigate against in Pulpus Harbor. We should only focus in on Hummock Pond. It's just that based on the watershed and the history and deposition characteristics, some of them rise to be more significant in areas than others. But ultimately, we should be trying to protect against everything that we can in every location, whether it's the highest cause or not.
Absolutely. And Joe?
Yeah, I do have a comment on the photos. I had a tough time trying to understand what was going on. And I think one of the reasons for it is the photo isn't taken from the same location between the different time periods. So you have to have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. And some of those I just couldn't relate to the current versus the previous. I'm wondering, what am I really looking at here? That's my only comment on it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a helpful comment. We could do more with photo monitoring points. When I was looking through them, I sort of have the background knowledge to be able to understand what they are, but it's a very good point that unless we're consistent, it may not make sense. I could totally see that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Joe. Is it usual to have two labs with the same samples come back with different values? That was another thing that I found interesting.
It can happen, and that is one of the reasons before we switch labs, or if we have a thought about using another lab, we have started double testing, because it totally can happen. And Liz covered pretty nicely in our report some of the reasons why she felt like that was happening, but it definitely can be the case.
Interesting. Thank you. It made for really interesting reading, I have to say. So
I'm glad.
that the parts I could understand, perhaps I should add. So Joe, is your hand stuck, or is that another question?
No, actually it's a comment. I've spent at least 35 years running laboratories. You're going to get exactly what you're talking about. And when you find the difference, and if it's substantial and really unexpected, you got to go to a third lab. And it depends on the process, the testing mechanism that they're using that'll give different results. And on a personal basis, if you ever get a bad result out of a laboratory on your body, go to another laboratory. Don't jump at the first one if it's out of whack.
Well,
Very cool. Thank you.
Well,
so I noticed that one of the samples was too concentrated for the lab to actually deal with, it said, which I thought was interesting too.
We actually deal with this at a national level where we are doing pesticide testing for groundwater. And so we're working with national labs and trying to get labs that run exactly the same test in exactly the same way with the same certifications is actually incredibly challenging on a national level. So it's something we've really delved into, and these are just local labs. So it's proven quite interesting, actually.
That seems like an understatement, Rachel.
Yeah, I could talk about this for a while, but I'm sure everyone else has other places they'd like to be this evening.
Well, thank you very much
Thank you.
for speaking with us. So,
yeah.
And without, unless there are any further questions, we'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That brings us on to enforcement actions, potential enforcement actions. So a member of the public got in touch with me, and I went out to Hoyts Hollow early this afternoon, and the ramp that has been put there, I assume by a contractor from SPPF. It had absolutely very little bearing on beach compatible sand. It was basically, do you have the other picture too of the mound in front of the, yeah. So when I went up and handled it, it's basically clay dirt and you know, a sort of sprinkling of sand in it. But it has absolutely no bearing with beach compatible sand. And
the clay is very evident in this photo, not to interrupt you, but just
no,
like ball aggregates all over the place. That's not very sand-like.
No, if anybody chooses to go out there and challenge my observation, I'm a Flying Dutchman. Or perhaps that dates me. Perhaps I should say I'm Travis Kelsey. So, you know, it was. So I also then walked. This is a separate issue, but so I walked down from 61, took the steps down, and walked along the choir rolls and the geotubes, and I'm going to ask Will to post my pictures tomorrow. It's a complete mess with remains of both the choir rolls and the and even fragments of geotube, very much in evidence. So there's obviously been, as far as I could tell, no attempt to pick up any of the debris. So yes, Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Related to the Hoyts Hollow ramp, can we please request that the project representative and the contractor here supply their sand testing to the commission? Because although from the picture, I tend to agree with you, we do need the results of that sand testing to definitively document the compliance with the mitigation sand. So I'll ask staff to get those reports for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth.
10-4.
I would actually like to suggest that we have an enforcement order forbidding any further work until that's presented. Because, I mean, it's so, and I take your point, Seth, but, you know, it was pretty self-evident to me, and if you go out there tomorrow morning, I think well, I would be very surprised if you didn't agree. So I was really shocked, to be honest with you. I don't know how commissioners would like to proceed. Thank you. Will, would you like to? Thank you. So I would like to entertain a motion to issue an enforcement order to cease and desist until this is cleared up. Yes, Linda.
I think it might be a little premature until we bring them into our next meeting to have a discussion about this before we issue an enforcement order. That's morbid curiosity.
Well, that would be one approach. Yes, Mark. You're actually muted.
I forgot. What specifically would you want to have mentioned in the enforcement order? I'm unclear. I mean, the pile of clay is obviously not the most compatible soil for the dump on the water or on the geotubes. What specifically were you thinking about?
Well, it just seems that rather than waiting to put sand down, they just clearly didn't bother. And so I think they should be penalized for not bothering.
But was there any attempt to do any work on the geotubes or coir rolls?
Well, not yet, but the reason why this is done is because there's my understanding is that there's a barge with sand coming in tomorrow, and that ramp has been put there so that I assume that the sand from the barge will be dumped down at the normal point on Baxter Road, and then it will be used to cover the geotubes, which right now are not only very bare, but the beach in front of the geotubes is at a fairly steep incline. It's the sand deprivation is clear for all to see, and I took photographs of it. So north and south of the geotubes, it's a flat beach, and at the geotubes, basically there is no beach at high tide. And as the tide goes out, then it's, I don't know, angled. I couldn't tell you the degree to which it's angled, but it's very self-evident when you walk out there.
Well, help me, Ian. Wouldn't dumping sand on the geotubes be helpful?
Yes.
So I wouldn't want to issue an enforcement order and stop that. Or would you? I mean, I'm unclear on that.
Well, when you put it that way, Mark, that seems like a rational approach. I just was so irritated. I just don't understand why we keep getting boxed into this. Or maybe I've been on this commission too long. So it just seems yet another example of just ignoring what should be a basic protocol, which is abiding by the orders of conditions. And so I see 3 hands up. So Seth.
Well, just one follow-up, Ian.
Yes.
I mean, your point about dumping sand tomorrow may be a good idea. Let's hope it's sand and not more of the same that's already sitting there.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, but I assume that the barge coming from the mainland will contain sand. Whether it's beach compatible is a separate issue, since it has to be from a different geological formation.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Seth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also in the camp that the cease and desist doesn't make sense in this case, but I do think we should require the project representative to submit their soil samples for that Hoyks Hollow ramp, and then if that material is determined to not be compatible with that area, then we could take remedial action at that point. I would just note Hoyks Hollow is one of the only places on Nantucket, or at least in the eastern end of Nantucket, that does contain a large section of clay. So I can't tell you whether the material is compatible without seeing the sampling report, but it doesn't look compatible to me. But we don't make our decisions based on looks or feel. In your case, feeling it. We make our decisions based on what the testing says. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Joe?
When are you supposed to receive the analysis of what they're dumping down there? Is that before they dump it or just after and a week later, or what's the regulation on that?
Well, I think the protocol has been fairly elastic, so I don't think we've ever asked for it in advance. I think they've just produced it as a matter of, I'm not even sure they produced it as a matter of record very often. And that's where we need Jeff or Will. I don't know if you can answer that, but
I may need Jeff for that, not to cut you.
No, I think we do. So, and one of the problems I think was that when we asked for soil samples, for sand samples, when it was clear it wasn't compatible, then it engendered quite a discussion of what was compatible and what wasn't. So, Linda, I have a feeling that you're going to agree with my fellow commissioners that I need to rein myself in here.
Well, my first comment was that I understand your frustration and irritation, having been at this for quite some time, or 10 years or whatever it is. But I do agree with Seth, and I sort of figure we need to have the staff have a conversation. We need the soil testing and et cetera, et cetera. So I think I don't want to issue an enforcement order at this time. And there could well be an enforcement order coming down the pike, but I think we're premature.
Thank you, Linda. So, Will, is your hand stuck? Or
I have a public comment from YouTube.
Oh.
And I did let Deanne know that unfortunately I can't, not to preempt her comment, but I'm not able to locate the OOC for the sand ramp right now. I'll have to find it later. But Deanne Atherton had said for the record that there is a permit governing the conditions relating to the ramp at Hoyts Hollow. Can Will please bring that up? Thank you. I've responded to her, and I'll make that available to everybody later.
Okay, thank you. So, all right, so it's the sense of the commission that staff request an analysis of what's been placed at the entrance at Hoyts Hollow. Okay. Do we need to make a motion to that extent? I think.
I will do so if we have to.
Or is it something that staff can just ask of their own bat?
I think we're fine with a staff recommendation.
Okay. All right. Any other enforcement actions or potential enforcement actions that you're aware of, Will?
I believe that's going to be it for tonight,
Okay.
but we may have some things next week after sending out the previous enforcement orders.
Okay. Reports. Crack. Kim.
Nothing new.
Okay. CPC, Mark.
Nothing new.
NP and EDC.
I don't think there's anything that relates to the Concom, but we've been very active in the transportation planning, bicycle and pedestrian planning, and those realms recently, but probably not too germane to the Concom here.
Did
I have
you-
a question for Seth, if I may, Ian.
Oh, absolutely. So do I, Mark, after you.
Just, where do we stand on that election of members versus appointing members? Ian, is anything happening?
Yes, we are moving forward with that, and there's going to be a special meeting in March specifically to discuss that the membership structure.
And did you appoint a new member to BPAC?
We did appoint a new member to BPAC, and we did appoint a new member to the NP and EDC because we had a vacant seat that was vacated by Christy Ferrantella after she took a job with the town of Nantucket.
Who was the BPAC member? Do you remember?
Ned Claflin, I think.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Let me see. Harbor Plan, Linda?
Slogging through it. Moving forward.
Offshore Wind Work Group? Okay. All right. Commissioners' comments. Any commissioners' comments?
Another good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Linda. That's kind of you. The administrator or staff report?
Great meeting. Strong showing of the plaid shirt club this evening. And I'm willing to bet that if Mizzarelli was here, he'd probably have one on too. Mark
My
didn't get
goodness,
the
that
memo.
is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm thinking Mark and I are like I'm in my Patriot sweatshirt. That's it.
Just an observation.
That's funny.
Duly noted. I hope we see it in the minutes.
I'm sorry, I don't measure up.
You can borrow one of mine.
Joe, are you making a motion to adjourn?
No, not yet, but I will right after this
Okay.
comment, and that is the article that you sent about sand worldwide was really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
It
yeah,
is, isn't
wow.
it?
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Where there's money, there's crime.
Here comes the Sahara.
Really?
And now I will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Joe, on both sides, both parts.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. By roll call vote, Mark Beal,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Joe Plendowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a very
And
good
Will,
evening.
Will, I
Thank
need
you.
a lesson in webinar use, I think.
Well-
I do too. We're gonna get the kinks worked out just fine, but this is new to me as well.
Oh, good. Okay, not just me.
Nope, not at all.
Not at all.
Okay, good.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a great night.
All right.